Thumbnails are the key to the click. If you don't have good thumbnails, you're not going to get any clicks to your video. This is actually one of the main reasons why most people struggle with YouTube, is because they can't even get people to view the video. I have real estate agents all the time, mortgage professionals, small business owners that come to me and say, I'm getting like 20 views on my video and I've had it up for 2 weeks. That usually happens because the content itself is incorrect, the topics, which is important too, but also because the thumbnails are not following the YouTube thumbnail rules. And so today I just want to take you through a couple of these really simple things that you can do to improve your thumbnails. And I guarantee you, if you apply these, you'll see an increase in the number of views and how far your videos actually go on YouTube, because YouTube is a platform that recommends your videos based on user experience. So if you have a poor user experience, the AI is going to look at your thumbnail and say, is this actually going to serve the audience based on the visual I see here? And that will determine how far your video goes as well. So the AI on YouTube is very powerful. We have to set us up for success by using good design from the very beginning. And the great news is that usually the thumbnails that are the most simple are actually the ones that do the best. So I'm a designer by trade. That's something that I studied in college. And I've always been very visually, skilled. That's something that I've always been good at. However, I found that some of my designs at the very beginning of this channel, when we first started it, actually did not do very well because I was overdoing it. A lot of graphic designers like to put a ton into it, and sometimes more is actually worse. So I'm going to just take you through a couple of things today. I'm going to show you examples too, because I'm going to prove this to you. If you don't believe me that this is what changes the game on YouTube, I'm going to show you some examples that will help you understand that better. And I also, if you see me looking down, I just have some notes. I wanted to make sure that I covered everything. And so anyway, so first of all, there's something I like to call the C4 of graphic design. There's 4 different things. In fact, let me see if I can pull up my phone here. Actually, you know what? I'll just edit this in. I like to just do these because I like to just get these out there and, throw them up as quickly as possible. So I don't do a ton of editing on my coaching videos, but I will put them here just on the side. But there's a couple of things that you need to keep in mind. The C4 of graphic design is number 1, it's got to be clear. Number 2, contrasting. Number 3, concise. And number 4, eye-catching. These 4 things, as long as you follow these rules, you do not have to be complex with your thumbnails. They will win every single time. So clear. The graphics themselves have to be pretty clear. It's pretty easy to mess up a thumbnail just because you've got motion maybe in your thumbnail and your hand is super blurry, or you're using a poor quality image of yourself. That turns people off so quickly. I look at these thumbnails side by side in my channel reviews all the time. And almost every single time that I see a really low quality image, especially a headshot of somebody on a thumbnail, it has a terrible click-through rate. Now, a click-through rate basically just is a fancy way of saying how often, percentage-wise, people, when they see your video, are actually clicking to watch your video. And usually on YouTube, we're looking for something between 2 and 10%. That's usually considered good. Our average click-through rate is above 5%, which is way above where the average creator is. So these things, following these 4 rules, will help you get into that 4 to 8% range that really the great creators really stick at. In fact, I was looking through some of Mr. Beast's thumbnails, and his thumbnails usually range around 7 or 8%. So if you're somewhere in that 4 to 8% range, you're way above the average creator. So you've got to be clear. You also really need to make sure that the point behind your thumbnail, the idea behind your thumbnail, is super clear too. So the messaging has to be super clear. Say that you're doing a video on a house tour, but you have it's a big picture of just you, and the thumbnail just says house. Obviously, that's not very clear on what you're talking about. You need to have good visuals, and you also need to add some context to your thumbnail so that people actually have an idea of what they can expect in the video. You don't want to give too much away. That's actually in Concise, that rule of conciseness. You don't want to give too much away because your thumbnail should be kind of a tease, But at the same time, you do need to give enough context that people would be intrigued to look at it. Another thing I kind of wanted to give you a visual on, and this is something I go through in my trainings all the time, but there's two kind of main sizes that you have to deal with when it comes to YouTube. And I think we usually think we have a lot more space than we do to design our thumbnails and make them impactful. These are the two sizes that most of us are dealing with, unless you're looking at TV. It's going to be a lot bigger on TV, but a lot of viewers are viewing this on a desktop or a mobile phone. This is desktop. It's really small. When I put it next to my face, it's super small. This is mobile, like so tiny. You have to make a huge impact, and that's, you know, hopefully that is making that clear. But anyway, you have very little space to make a really big impact. So you need to be very selective about what you put on your thumbnail and why you're putting it there. If you're not clear on the vision of your thumbnail, you're not clear on the purpose, then your audience isn't either. The next thing you have to deal with is contrast. So actually, let me share my screen really quick. I'm going to show you just some examples. I actually made a whole template pack. It's 100 thumbnails that I personally designed based on our best performing thumbnails, the best performing thumbnails for our students that we've helped coach, who have also had success on YouTube. And then, of course, some of the highest performing across YouTube, across different industries. And so let me just share my screen here. All right, the entire screen here. So, okay, so here is, hopefully you can see this, but every single one of these has super high contrast. So you're gonna notice like lots of blues and yellows. Blues, greens, and yellows, they do so much better on YouTube than any other color. So if you can have those colors in there, you're probably gonna have a high performer. But notice that every single one of these, everything is contrasting. Even the text style, like the font itself, is super high contrast. So, you know, if I ever have more than one font on a thumbnail, which I don't even know that I have a whole lot of examples here, like here, these are super high contrast. There's nothing super similar about these two fonts. And so I'm not using two of the exact same thing on a thumbnail. But yeah, basically these are, I designed 100 of these based on our highest performers and the ones that our students have seen the most success with, along with across industry. So this is the type of stuff. And I'm always telling people, stay away from Canva templates. They're a hot mess. They're not good because a lot of times they're just way too busy. And so that's why I decided to design these, because I know a lot of people actually use Canva and it's become such a great tool. I mean, it's so useful for people and so quick to use, especially for people who don't understand how to use Photoshop. This kind of simplifies the process. But you have to be careful, because if you use something that's not optimized for YouTube leads and not following the C4 design rules, then you're probably not going to have a very good click-through rate. So that's why I created these 100. But you'll notice on all of these, you know, they have super high contrast. Never use something that is like the same color as the background. Like even here on something like this, there's a little bit of a shadow back here just because I didn't want the white to blend into the clouds. So you have to kind of think about those types of little details. But again, look how simple these are. Top, suburb, and Dallas. Like it's so easy. It has the context that you need. It has the contrast that you need, but there's not a whole lot to it. It's very simple, and simplicity usually is what makes the biggest difference on YouTube. Okay, so let me just take you over to our channel too. So these are some of our top performers of all time. Okay, like this one has almost 400,000 views, and it still gains traction every single day. By the way, we released this almost a year ago, and it still is getting, you know, a lot. I mean, I would have to go look at the stats, but I know that it's getting probably 500 to 1,000 a day. So it's crazy how much traction and how far and how long you get to experience good growth from a video that just has very simple stuff applied, right? This one you can read, and it's even, I think it might even be smaller than, now this is in preview mode, but this actually might be a smaller thumbnail than the one that you see for mobile. And I can still read this, right? We've got that super bright blue right here. And then we've got, you know, the bright red, it's super contrasted, all of that good stuff. All of these are really easy to read from a long ways away, and there's not a whole lot going on, right? Like we don't have a bunch of busy items coming into the picture. We don't have a bunch of weird stuff popping in that doesn't make sense, right? We have only a couple of words and then a big subject that we're kind of focusing on. So you just got to make sure that it's really Concise, that's the other one that I was going to say. You don't want to use a bunch of words and a bunch of extra subjects, things that are out of context on your thumbnail. Just simpler is always better. So concise, I kind of glazed over that one, but you would just want to keep it usually 3 to 4 words maximum is what I usually recommend. And that helps a lot. And of course, eye-catching, you just have to make it look different. If you're doing stuff that's exactly the same, as especially somebody in your own market, that is really going to hurt your click-through rate. So you need to make sure that you're doing something that's unique to you. Try to find a font that is unique to you, something that no one else has used, right? Make sure it's thick. These are what we call block fonts. And you want to make sure that it's thick, easy to read, right? But it doesn't have to be the same font as the person who is also, working in your same market and looks like they're getting lots of leads, right? Do something unique and different. In fact, if you want a story, I actually had a client who was copying a lot of what we were doing. We've kind of created our own problem, right? But they were copying a lot of what we were doing, the styles that we were doing. And they started getting calls for us and we started getting calls for them. And so our wires were crossed and we ended up switching our thumbnail style because it's easier for us as the coach to switch the thumbnail style than probably the student, right? But us and the student, we were getting calls for this person and they were getting calls for us. And so we were crossing wires. So you don't want that to happen. Make sure you're establishing a real brand for yourself and make it different than everybody else. And if you start to notice that someone's kind of doing something similar to you, then maybe switch it up a little bit. You just always want to be innovating and watching your channel. So those are really, really important things. Now, in terms of things that you don't want to do, I would definitely say make sure that you're not making the mistake of, again, putting way too much on your thumbnail. I think this is probably the biggest mistake that most people make is they try to, here, I'm going to stop screen sharing for a second here. Yeah, I think it's really easy for a lot of people to just think, okay, I'm going to add as much into this as I possibly can. It's going to be busy. It's going to catch people's eye. Busy actually causes something called confusion, right? Like confusion is the opposite of all the marketing C's that I just talked about, that C4 framework. It's the opposite C. It's what deters people from your videos and from your designs. So you don't want to create confusion at any point for people, because if you do, people are going to pass you over. You have less than 1 second to actually grab somebody's attention on YouTube. It used to be, I think it used to be 3 only like a year ago. And now they did another study and it's less than a second that we have to capture someone's attention on YouTube. That is, and I'm sure it's a lot in part because we have short form content now, right? TikTok, Instagram, we're being groomed to expect to be entertained in less time or educated in less time. We don't feel like that dopamine hit is required so much faster, right? And so we have to respond to that and make sure that we're actually creating content that captures somebody immediately upon looking on it. Because there's just too many choices, even on YouTube, which is probably the least crowded, I wouldn't call it a social media site or anything like that because it's more of a search engine, but it's probably the most open out of all of the different platforms out there, but it's still, there's competition there and we need to make sure that we stand apart. Let's see, I just want to make sure I grab everything in here. On your imagery, there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. So I'll show you on my thumbnail templates again here. Okay, so on these templates, another thing you're going to notice, these are what we call posed shots. Actually, that one's more of an in-shot thumbnail. But this is a post shot where you actually take like emotional photos of yourself. So you do like a smiling and a frowning and a confused and that type of thing. And then you pose ahead of time. Those work okay. But what I find is that a lot of times this is a hybrid in-shot thumbnail. An in-shot thumbnail just basically means that you pull an image of yourself from the actual video. And so it kind of creates a sense of trust in the viewer, because a lot of times we have so much curated content that people are like, oh, I don't really think they're going to share those secrets with me, or I don't really think I'm going to learn that in this video. And so when we actually have a picture of ourselves from the video and they see that we're wearing the same outfit, we're in the same location, it just gives people confidence and helps them feel like, okay, yes, they're being honest and transparent with me. And so these tend to perform a little bit better. This is what we call a hybrid, because this background is obviously, we've superimposed this in front. Let me see if I can find one here that's actually pure. So this one, technically, this one was created to give you more of an idea of what kind of poses you can take, but this would be considered an in-shot thumbnail, because if you were really standing in front of that city and you took a picture of yourself and that was the background, it's purely a frame from the video. And so those ones tend to do the best. The hybrids are kind of in the middle, and then the pose shots, like this is another one that you could consider an in-shot thumbnail, because again, this one was created as an example of a pose you could make and a backdrop that you could create as well. So those thumbnails tend to do extremely, extremely well. So yeah, let me take that off of there. But hopefully this was helpful. The imagery is really important. You just need to make sure that you are really putting a lot of thought into your thumbnails. Out of everything that you can do, there's certain things, there's certain kind of pivotal points with a video, and the thumbnail is one of those pivotal access points. If you don't get the click, you're not going to get the call. And if you don't get the call, you're not going to get the commission check, right? So make sure that you're setting yourself up for success by using these rules to create your thumbnails. And I promise you, your thumbnails are going to do so much better and your view counts are going to go way up.